Hi, I'm Christy McDonald, and here's what's coming up on One Detroit Arts and Culture. The power of African American contributions to classical music. Renowned vocalist and U of M voice professor Dr. Louise Toppin. Plus saying goodbye in a public display of love around Belle Isle. Then Kresge eminent artist Marie Wu on inspiring the next generation, and Detroit Jazz City. It's all coming up on this One Detroit.
Support for this program provided by W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. Nissan Foundation, Ally, and viewers like you.
Hey, One Detroit, I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for joining me. This show is all about arts and culture across our area and the different ways we're loving music, performance, and art, things we usually experience in a group or a community during the constraints of COVID-19. So this show is all about bringing those experiences to you. So coming up on One Detroit, meet the 2020 Kresge Eminent Artist Award winner, Marie Wu, and see how at age 92, she's inspiring the next generation. Then a moving tribute to those who have died in the city of Detroit from COVID-19. It's a community day of remembrance. Rochelle Riley talks with WRCJ's Peter Whorf. Also ahead, we'll have an early look at a new documentary coming to Detroit Public Television. It's called Detroit Jazz City. Well, we're starting off with a little history and celebration of African American influence on classical music. Dr. Louise Toppin is a vocal professor at the University of Michigan and an acclaimed performer. She's also heading up this year's African American Music Conference. It's happening next week at the U of M. Will Glover has the story.
What is it? What's it about? And, tell me what we can expect.
So it's a conference that really is looking at particularly the concert repertoire of African Americans, because I find so many times we don't talk about this music and put it in its context. Without knowing about this music, we're missing a part of the American story. African American composers from the Academy wrote about the experiences like Malcolm X's assassination or Martin Luther King from the perspective of the Black community. So you have popular musicians writing about it, jazz musicians, but you don't have white classical musicians writing about these same current and important events. You have Black composers who wrote about it. And so that's what this conference does. It celebrates the contributions of these people. But also it's highlighting, this year's conference is highlighting Willis Patterson. Willis Patterson, who will turn 90 years old this fall, was an important voice for all of us who went to Michigan. I did my doctorate at Michigan, and he was one of my mentors. But his legacy is that, first of all, he's from Ann Arbor, so it's celebrating someone who is a Michigan native, but also he became the first African-American faculty member at the University of Michigan in the School of Music. So we're celebrating his life as a performer. He was an advocate for this repertoire. The reason that I'm doing what I do in African-American music is because of the example that he set for us. He was important in terms of a 1963 opera by Menotti called Amahl and the Night Visitors. He pushed the NBC to cast a Black person in the role of the Black King, because previously it had always been shown with a white man in blackface. And so, as a young person, he's pushing. He was in 1963, he would have been 50 years ago. So about a 40-year-old. So he's in the middle of his career, and yet he has the gumption to write to a major company and say, I don't agree with your choice. And so he pushed them. They held auditions, and he won the part.
How can we go to enjoy this conference, and where are we sending people to participate, and when is it going on?
Thank you. So it's at the University of Michigan, and it says African American Music Conference, I think is the title for the link. If you go click on it, September 18th to 20th. It's starting at 2 o'clock on the 18th with the radio broadcast of the music of Willis Patterson with Brad Creswell on WBGE. Then it has a round table with 3 scholars, two deans, and a president of University of Richmond. I pulled in heavy hitters for this. Yes. That's how I would do, to have a conversation about diversifying the curriculum, which is a big issue for all of us now. So they're going to talk, who better than 3 people who have spent their lives in higher education to talk about what needs to happen within it. Then the third session that day is Willis Patterson is giving his papers to the Bentley Historic Library on the campus of University of Michigan. What it does is this man who has been such a part of history, his papers will now be accessible to researchers for now and into the future.
How important is African American music, and how does it intersect with the things that we're facing today?
I think African American music is hugely important. Music is always important as a part of telling our cultural history and why we cannot continue to operate under practices of systemic racism. We have got to learn this history. I teach a course in African American art song for the University of Michigan. It's the first time any school has asked me to teach them. I've taught at several schools. And one of the things that I found immediately was I have to teach the history of African Americans in order for students to even understand what this music is about. And so I think that having these composers who are marking this moment, and I mean in all forms, helping us to not only think about what this moment is for us, but helping those that are going to come after us to reflect on this moment. And I think that, music is a salve to many people, and it is important, but it gives us a way of giving voice in a way other than, this is a moment you want to just scream. And it gives you a creative outlet to express yourself. And that's what I'm hoping that all the musicians and all the artists are doing. We are marking this moment. We are helping the next generation know why we have to change this.
August 31st was an emotional day in the city of Detroit. The pictures of those who died in the city from COVID-19 were placed all around Belle Isle. It was a way to grieve together as a community when we've been faced with so many restrictions during the pandemic. The event was put on by the city, and they asked our public radio station, WRCJ, to provide a soundtrack for people while they were driving through and paying their respects. Peter Whorf from WRCJ talked with Rochelle Riley, the Director of Arts and Culture for the City of Detroit.
Can you tell our viewers and our listeners about the genesis of this Detroit Memorial Day drive-through? Of course, this is about losses due to the terrible pandemic throughout our communities here in the Detroit area. But how did the idea for the Belle Isle Drive come about?
Well, this was very simply Mayor Mike Duggan responding to residents who are hurting, who aren't able to have, the funerals that their loved ones deserved, and they just wanted the city to do something. And he thought that a day of mourning was appropriate. We'll be the first ones in the country to do it. And he assigned me. And I thought, well, we cannot gather, we cannot have any big celebrations or anything inside a building, and we have an island. So I decided that we would do, it's not a drive-through, it's a cruise. We didn't have the typical cruise that we have each summer, down Woodward. So if there's no dream cruise, we could have a memorial cruise. So we have almost 900 photos that will be staked around Belle Isle of the loved ones we've lost. And on Monday, which is Family Day, we're going to have 15 funeral processions led by hearses from area funeral homes that are going to lead those families around to take one last look at their loved ones.
Can you tell us what people will see when this takes place?
Well, these are billboards. I wanted them to be large. I wanted them to really be able to see them, because the most important part of this event, because I follow everything my governor says, is that we must have social distancing. They will not be able to get out of the cars. They will have to drive past them. Of course, they can come back on Tuesday and Wednesday with the public, to see them again. But we wanted to make sure they were big enough. So they're 4 by 4 foot billboards that they'll be seeing, and they'll be spaced. We were going to space them, 6 feet apart. We're looking at all the imagery and symbolism we could, but 6 feet was not enough. So they'll probably be about 12 to 15 feet apart. So there's plenty of time for them to look, and they will be actual processions. They will be very solemn, very, revered processions led by a hearse. So they would have the funeral procession they would have had they been at a church taking their family member from the church to the cemetery, as we've seen so many times. And we also want people to see this and to see the photos so they can wrap their minds around the idea that we've lost 1,500 people. If we had lost 1,500 people in one single incident, half the number of 9/11 or, 4 plane crashes, people would pay attention. But because we're not seeing funerals and we're not seeing hearses, and it's happening, this quiet, slow, lonely death, I don't think people really are getting that. So they're going to have a chance to see almost, 1,000 faces of people that we've lost. And we hope that will literally lead people to take this, those who aren't, take this more seriously.
A final question. What's your hope for those who take part in this event on Monday for their futures?
Well, I can tell you, if there's anything I can tell by the phone calls and the beautiful notes that I've gotten from people, it's that people are paying attention, that their loved ones are having some attention. So while it won't be closure, it will be an opportunity for them to say a goodbye that they didn't think they could say. And I'm hoping that literally the whole city is uplifted by us taking a moment to honor each other and to help take care of each other, and to remember that, we're not really paying attention to how much we're hurting right now. There's just this massive post-traumatic stress going on. This is a chance for all of us to take a moment to really reflect and be a little more inward, and to really think about what we're going through and reach out to each other and care. So think about those 1,500 folks that are gone and the families who are left behind. And remember, as Detroiters, we look out for each other. So let's do that.
It's a Detroit Memorial Day drive, Monday, August 31st, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Detroit's Belle Isle. Rochelle Riley is Director of Arts and Culture at the Mayor's Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship for the City of Detroit. Rochelle, thanks very much for making this happen and for joining us.
You. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and it's my honor to do this for my city.
Turning now to the pottery of Marie Wu. She's the 2020 Kresge Eminent Artist, and maybe you've seen her work, or you've bought tiles with her signature color, Wu Blue. At 92 years of age, she's inspiring the next generation of artists. We caught up with Marie right after she received her award.
A lot of potters are inspired by my work, which I'm happy about. I'm the first potter, and I'm the first Asian. I'm the first Chinese to be nominated and awarded. It's wonderful. I went to graduate school at Cranbrook, and I wanted to study with Maya Grotel. She was a very dedicated artist, and she was very influential and inspiring, and she was my role model. And she was very knowledgeable as far as glazes are concerned.
Glaze really is the combination of art and chemistry, and really if you simplify glaze, it's really a glass coating that goes on the surface of ceramics. But to formulate it is fairly complex, and it's something that Marie was able to do in her variety of glazes that still can be found in our studio today. This is our Woo Blue Brown on the different clay bodies that we have here available at the studio. And so anywhere from a porcelain to a stoneware, you can kind of see that surface variation that students are really excited about.
Now there are so many young potters that I don't know them, but I'm very happy they like my glazes. They use Woo Yellow and Woo Blue, and I hope it works for you. Oh, this was taken in Nepal, Kathmandu, BC. BC means before children. We were very young in the 60s. I traveled and noticed that folk pottery was just dying out. So I decided before they disappear, I should do some documenting and researching. And so it became a symposium and an exhibition. Then it became a traveling show. About 40 pieces. It traveled from the Midwest to the East, to museums. 2019, I said, I can't do this anymore. So I donated quite a few pieces. Usually when you donate pieces to a museum, it goes in storage and it's never seen again. But I want the students to handle and study them.
In 1981, Pewabic became a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and she joined the board at that time.
In those days, nonprofits were very difficult. They were always in the red. And so when they're in the red, they want to eliminate education classes. Some people and I fought for education.
Historically, Marie really advocated for this program, and at a time where maybe it didn't make a lot of sense, she had this kind of forward-facing vision of what this could be. It's kind of nice to see today that we've become, I think, what she envisioned, 30 years ago.
This clay piece here is actually, I wanted it black all the way like this, but it came out of the kiln with all this texture. Wonderful. And then I took the hands and glued them on and made it as a wall piece. I think that works pretty well.
One really fun aspect that's come from the last few weeks of Marie popping around after winning this award is a lot of our students, we kind of encourage them to have goals of things that they should be working towards. And now there's this kind of similar goal that's been popping up since Marie came here, and that everyone wants to loosen up the way that they work with clay. And so I think that's something that's really unique about Marie. She has these incredible skill sets, but she has this kind of loose nature about working with clay that's very organic and kind of has been very magnetic for our students. And so I'm kind of finding now that the students kind of all have this shared goal of loosening up like Marie.
I'm started this piece as an experiment. So I took these very individual pieces and fired them, and then I stacked them up and put some glue in between, and it became a piece of sculpture after it's fired. I think it works pretty well. But by itself, each piece would not work. But together, it's a whole.
She's just so lovely, and I think just simply loves what she does. Her resume is pretty outstanding, and she's someone that, her impact isn't a secret. And so I expected her to almost carry that more than she does, but she's very open and infectious.
I'm just trying to express how I feel and what I can do with the clay as a way to express myself. I don't want to fight it, I just sort of go with it. Hopefully my experiments will work. Some do and some don't.
And finally on the show, an early look at a documentary coming up on Detroit Public Television on the history of Detroit jazz. It's especially fitting coming off a great weekend of music from Detroit's virtual jazz festival. The documentary is called Detroit Jazz City.
You can't tell the story of jazz in America without also telling the story of jazz from Detroit. There are just too many musicians that have come from here that have made too big an impact. And the list of great musicians from here just goes on and on and on, all the way up into the present day. I don't think the Detroit jazz musicians have gotten their due as a group. Until you put all of these musicians together, you don't really realize how profound an impact that the city has had on the course of modern and contemporary jazz.
And if you just look at the list of artists and you're a jazz fan, it's like, wow, all these guys are from Detroit?
I mean, you can't pick up a record that was made on the East Coast between, say, 1955 and 1970 and not run into 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 or more musicians that are from Detroit.
I would look through the records and find out that, whoa, Donald Byrd is from Detroit. Oh, Tommy Flanagan, the great pianist, is from Detroit. Oh, wow, the Jones brothers, Alvin Jones, Hank Jones, and Thad Jones, and someone like Ron Carter, who is someone who has really been a mentor to me, probably the most recorded bass player in the history of jazz. This is right here from Ferndale.
People don't realize the importance of Detroit jazz. You know, of course you got New Orleans, you got New York, but then there's Detroit, you know, and it's just a little different. You know, it's a little different. The expectation is higher. When you say that you're from Detroit, they expect you to be a badass.
Why is it that this town of all cities would have, because I mean it's out the way, and why is it that it became the music center? And I was talking to some people today. Actually, I would say that when somebody one of these days sit down and write the history, they will find out that this town has produced more talent and musicians than any other city in America on a one-to-one basis. Now, when you got more people that come out of Detroit that are in the music entertainment field than any place in the world.
Jazz is an expression of African American culture. By 1950, 300,000 or so African Americans are living in Detroit. It's about 16% of the population. You have to remember, Detroit, in the middle of the 20th century, in 1950, we're the 5th largest city in the country with 1.85 million people.
Afro-Americans coming from the South, you know, it was running from them fields. Oh, we can work the factory. That's like heaven, you know. And they getting a study, a paycheck, and the paycheck was, after a while, became really substantial. So this became like one of the first middle classes. You know, it was built from the auto industry. Being they had good insurance, good pensions. They couldn't do any wrong.
The center of black life in Detroit in those days was Paradise Valley. There were scores of restaurants, clubs, hotels, providing opportunities for live music and for musicians to make a living. And, you know, musicians could work here and stay here and thrive here. And those neighborhoods, just walking down the street, you could hear blues and jazz seeping out of windows. This sort of thick haze of blues and swing just kind of would settle on street corners. There was classical music in the community, gospel music in the community. Detroit was a center for all kinds of musical activity. You can't underestimate the way in which this culture was saturated with music. Jazz is an expression of all of that.
These places were significant in that it created a space for the African American community, for musicians, for doctors, for lawyers, for families. This was a place that was ours, something that was near and dear to the hearts of people. It was a domain.
The name musicians were working around here. I'm talking about like Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, and those they would live in Detroit and would go to New York to record, and then come back here and work the region.
The Bluebird is where Dizzy Gillespie and Miles Davis and others would come to play in the late 1940s, and they'd play with the local talent who kept up with them. In fact, inspired them. And, they brought this energy.
Detroit Jazz City premieres on September 18th at 9:30 p.m. and you can always find out more online at onedetroitpbs.org. And you don't have to be parked in front of your TV to watch your favorite PBS shows now. Detroit Public TV is the first PBS station to offer every show live on streaming devices. So yes, your phone, your computer, your tablet. Find out more at onedetroitpbs.org. That's going to do it for me. I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time on One Detroit. Take care.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.
Support for this program provided by W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. Nissan Foundation, Ally, and viewers like you.